Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to animate SVG drawings inside a Next.js project using GSAP, the Green Sock animation platform. I'm not going to cover the basics of Next.js in this tutorial, so I assume you already have some fundamental knowledge of it. This is what the final result will look like. Mario gets drawn on the screen using GSAP's DrawSVG plugin, and then fills the color and expands in size. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to this channel. I would really appreciate it if you could support the channel by visiting Buy Me a Coffee and contributing, so I can keep producing more high quality tutorials. I also highly recommend checking out my beginner GSAP course to build a solid understanding of GSAP fundamentals. Alright, let's get started. Create a new Next.js project and name it whatever you like. I'm naming mine Mario. Also, please make sure that you have the same version as mine, that is 16.0.3. Then proceed to the next steps. I will use JavaScript instead of TypeScript for this tutorial, so I'm selecting no customized settings and follow along with the options that I choose. Now navigate to our project. In this case, it's Mario by CD Mario. Let's test if the app is working by typing npm run dev. If you go to localhost:3000 and see the default home page, then everything is working correctly. Now we can do some housekeeping to clean up the starter code. Open page.js and remove everything inside the root div. Also remove any class names and unused imports. Then go to layout.js and remove the global.css import. Now we will have a plain empty homepage. Next, create a folder inside src directory called components, and inside it, create a new component named mario.jsx. This is a client component, so the first thing we do is to mark it with use client. This is required because GSAP runs in the browser and we need access to hooks like useEffect and useRef. Next, we need two packages for GSAP to work properly in Next.js environment. The first package is GSAP. This is the main GreenSock engine that provides the core animation features. Let's install it by using npm install GSAP. The second package is @gsap/react. This is a helper library built specifically for React. It adds React-friendly tools that make GSAP easier and safer to use within React's rendering lifecycle. We will add the relevant imports as we use them, but first I want to show you the SVG I'll be using. You don't need to download this SVG manually because I've already provided the SVG path in my blog post. The link is in the description of this video. I'll be adding the outline using CSS, which I'll show you shortly. An SVG file is composed of XML-based markup that describes shapes, paths, text, colors, and transformations. If I open the file using a text editor or VS Code, you can see that it's written using XML markup, just as I mentioned. To give you a better idea of what a typical SVG looks like, let me open this file in a text editor. For our project, we will only need the content inside SVG tag. We will separate the styling into a different CSS file, but the entire SVG tag and its contents will be placed directly inside our functional component. Now back to our component, let's create the functional component named Mario, initially returning an empty div. Now I've copied the SVG content that I provided in the blog post and pasted it inside the div. Next, let's separate the styles into a different file. It's a standard practice, but not required, but recommended, to create a folder for each component and place both the component and its corresponding style sheet inside it. So right-click inside the components folder and create a new folder called Mario. move mario.jsx file into this new folder and then create a CSS module file named mario.module.css. Now go back to the component, cut everything inside the style tags from the SVG and paste it inside the CSS file. Then remove the style tag completely. As a quick aside, I want to format the styling of our code using Prettier so everything stays clean and consistent. So let's install Prettier for this project. This installs Prettier as a development dependency. Next, create a file named .prettierrc at the root of your project folder and paste in the configuration snippet provided in the blog post. Then open package.json and add the following line inside the scripts section. This command tells Prettier to format the entire project automatically. Now run npm run format. When you go back to your component file, you will notice the Prettier has neatly organized and formatted your code. Now let's add the Mario component to the page.js inside the app router. Run the app again by typing npm run dev. You may see a few errors in the console. The first one appears because JSX does not allow attributes with colons, so we need to convert those to camel case. Let's import the CSS module and update each SVG path so that its class attribute is replaced with the corresponding class name from the CSS module. And change the attribute name from class to class name. And also delete the style attribute on the SVG itself. Once you do that, go back to the browser and you can see our Mario SVG has rendered successfully. Before we animate anything, let's understand what this SVG actually is. The G tag groups elements together. A group lets us organize multiple paths, but it doesn't draw anything by itself. It's like a folder that contains shapes. Each path represents a shape, a piece of the character. In this SVG, the first path represents the green areas, the second path represents the red areas, and the third path represents the skin-colored areas. Each path has a class, so we can style it using CSS, a long string of numbers in the D attribute. This defines the shape. The D attribute describes the vector outline of the shape. GSAP can animate the stroke or fill of each path. Now let's add a stroke outline so we can animate the drawing effect. Go to the CSS file and add a black stroke with a width for each class. Back in our component, in order to animate each path, we need to use refs to target the elements we want to animate. As you may know, in React, we use refs to grab DOM elements directly. We need 4 refs, one for the SVG itself and one for each path. I'm naming each path according to its associated color. Next, attach these refs to corresponding elements in your component. The SVG ref goes to the SVG element and the remaining refs goes to each path element. Now we come to the main part of this lecture, animating the object. For that, we need to import GSAP's core and its React helper library. We want to run the animation when the component mounts. Traditionally, we would use the useEffect hook for side effects like operations on initial render, but here we use the useGSAP hook. So why use GSAP instead of useEffect? Well, the advantage is that any GSAP animations, scroll triggers, draggables, or split text instances automatically cleaned up when the component unmounts. This prevents duplicate animations or memory leaks, which is especially important in React 18's strict mode, where effects run twice in development. If we used useEffect, we would need to manually handle cleanup to avoid memory leaks. useGSAP works similarly like useEffect. It takes two parameters, a function inside which we write our GSAP code. Next is a dependency array. For this lecture, we will leave the dependency array empty. We will discuss dependencies more in a future lesson. Finally, to use GSAP, we need to register it with GSAP before the component function. So gsap.register plugin and inside use GSAP. Let's create a timeline with a default duration of 4 seconds and an async function of power1.inout. We will use this timeline for the drawing effect. Later, we will create another timeline to animate the fill colors. Next, we need to import the DrawSVG plugin. Since it's a named export, we use curly braces. Replace all with DrawSVG plugin. Then, register this plugin along with useGSAP so React knows to manage it. Now back inside the useGSAP hook, the idea is to draw the red path first, followed by green and skin paths. We will use from_to to animate each path from hidden to fully drawn. A red path ref.current refers to the actual DOM element. DrawSVG is a property provided by DrawSVG plugin to animate the stroke. Here, 0% and 0% in the from state means the path is hidden. 0% and 100% in the state means the path is fully drawn. If you check the browser, you will see the red path being drawn. Next, head over to the CSS module and comment out the fill color from each path and set the fill to none. The reason we set the fill to none is that otherwise it will default to a black background. The next reason I commented out the fill color is this. We will be adding the fill color to each path programmatically using GSAP. And for that, we need a reference for each color. If we remove the original fill values entirely, we would have to reopen the original SVG later and copy the colors again whenever we need them. Keeping the fill values in comments ensures we can easily refer back to the original colors without extra work. Come back to our main component. Then duplicate the from_to tween 2 more times for the green and skin paths, updating the path references. Refresh the browser and you will see the paths are being drawn sequentially. To overlap the animations, we use the timeline offset parameter. For the green path, we want it to start along with the first tween, so we set -=4 as the last parameter. For the skin path, we want it to start 2 seconds after the first one, so we will use -=2. Now that the drawing is complete, let's add fill colors using GSAP after the first timeline finishes. Let's create another timeline with a default duration of 1 second and an easing function of power1.inout. Copy each path's color from CSS module which we commented out and paste it in the fill property in the to method of each path. We add 0 to each path's offset parameter so that fill animations happen simultaneously. Otherwise, the fill animation happens sequentially. This will fill each path with the correct colors after the drawing animation completes. I later realized that I forgot to mention the correction I made. I didn't add .current to the refs when selecting each path, so please update the first parameter accordingly. My apologies. Now there is one issue. Timeline 1 and Timeline 2 start simultaneously. To fix this, we can add an offset when adding TL2 to the main timeline. So the offsets would be minus equals 2.5. Again, if you want a refresher on timelines, please revisit my GSAP beginner's course on my channel. Now the main part of the animation is done. Next, let's animate the size. We want the SVG to grow after the animation completes. For that, we use the useState hook. Create a state for the size with 500 as the default value. You can adjust this to your preference. And add width and height attributes to SVG element and bind them to this state. When you check the browser, the SVG will now have a width and height of 500 pixels. Next, in TL2, the last timeline, we set the onComplete callback to update the size state to 700. The size updates correctly, but the transition isn't smooth. To fix this, we use another useGSAP hook specifically for the size transition. As I mentioned earlier, useGSAP is like useEffect, but optimized for animations. We pass the size state as a dependency. So this hook runs whenever size changes. Now we can grab the SVG ref. So before that, we need to ensure that the DOM element is available. This will prevent errors on the first render. Just a double check. And then gsap.to, and inside, for the first parameter, we will pass svgref.current. And for the properties, we will pass width, height, and both of them having the same state size, and then duration of 0.5 and an ease property of power1.inout. And for the dependency array, we will pass the size. So whenever size changes, this hook will be triggered. And that's it. Here is our final result. This is how you animate an SVG drawing inside a Next.js project using GSAP. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know which GSAP or Next.js tutorials you would like to see next. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.